Hello, everyone. This is going to be your new hire safety orientation. These guidelines are going to be based on CFR Parts 142, Parts A through C. It's just going to be some basic safety guidelines. I'm starting off with Subpart A, which is just going to be general safety. The purpose of Subpart A General is intended to promote workplace safety and health for personnel, workplace activities and conditions, and equipment on the Outer Continental Shelf. Duties of lessees, permittees, and responsible persons for operations. Each lessee or permittee must ensure that all places of employment within the lease area or within the area covered by the permit on the OCS comply with workplace safety and health regulations free from recognized hazards, and that all personnel should ensure that operations under their control comply with workplace safety and health regulations free from recognized hazards. You recognize hazards are going to be hazards generally known among persons in the industry to likely cause death or serious injury, or routinely controlled in the affected industry. All right, 142.7 is going to go over reports of unsafe working conditions. All personnel have the authority to report any possible violation listed in this subchapter or any other unsafe working condition to an officer in charge. Upon review, the officer in charge will notify the owner or operator of any deficiency or hazard and may initiate enforcement measures if necessary. And just remember, your personal identity will only be made available to the officer in charge and DOT employees unless you give permission. All right, now we're going to go into subpart B, which is going to go over your general personal protective equipment, your PPE. 142.21 is the purpose and applicability of your PPE. This subpart prescribes requirements concerning personnel protection on OCS facilities. We're going to get into the use of equipment. Leaseholders must ensure that all personnel use or wear personnel protective equipment, PPE. Everybody must use it. Personnel responsible for actual operations must ensure all personnel involved in the operation use or wear PPE properly as specified by this subpart. All right, first area of PPE we're going to go into is eye and face protection. Personnel involved in observing welding, grinding, machining, chipping, handling hazardous materials such as chemicals, or burning and cutting must wear eye and face protection. This protection must meet ANSIZ 87.1 requirements. PPE must be maintained in good condition. PPE must be marked with the info required by ANSIZ 87.1 for that type of protector. There you have a couple examples of eye and face protection. Now we're going to go into head protection. Head protection shall be worn in all areas where there is a hazard of falling objects or contact with electrical conductors. PPE shall meet the specs of ANSI Z89.1. PPE must be marked with information specified by ANSI Z89.1. Just your typical hard hat here. It's a form of head protection. Now we'll get into foot protection. Personnel working in areas that present a probability of foot injury to occur shall wear footwear meeting the specs of ANSI Z41. PPE must be marked with the information specified by ANSI Z41. Here you have just your general steel-toe boots. Protective clothing. Proper gloves and clothing shall be worn in areas where there are flying particles, molten metal, radiant energy, heavy dust, or hazardous materials. Clothing must be suitable for protecting against the hazard involved. Here's an example of a Tyvek suit. So In this case, it could be chemical, could be hazardous dust, things of that nature. Now we'll get into respiratory protection. Required use of respiratory protection equipment shall be worn in atmospheres specified under ANSIZ 88.2. The type of respiratory protection is defined by ANSIZ 88.2 for specific atmospheres. Before entering an atmosphere under ANSIZ 88.2, persons listed in 142.2 shall ensure that personnel, so those people are your leasees and permittees, shall ensure that personnel, 1, follow the correct procedures concerning the proper selection of respirators and fit testing, 2, and are trained how to use the equipment and know the short and long-term effects of exposure. All respiratory PPE must be maintained, approved, and used in accordance to ANSIZ 88.2. Here you have just a couple different types of respiratory protection, from your half mask, your air purifying, and just your dual cartridge. Safety belts and lifelines. When working at where a hazard of falling 10 feet or more is present, personnel should wear a safety belt or harness secured by a lanyard to a lifeline, drop line, or fixed anchor. Each safety belt, harness, lanyard, lifeline, and drop line must meet the specs of ANSI 810.14. PFDs, your personal flotation devices. If personnel are working on a location where the likelihood of falling into water is present, personnel shall wear a work vest that meets the requirements of 33 CFR 146.20 or a life preserver that meets the requirements of 46 CFR 160.002, 160.005, or 160.055. This is a requirement except when using the safety belts and lifelines required by 142.42. Here's just an example of a work vest. Eye wash equipment. Portable or fixed eye wash equipment must be immediately available near drill floor, mud rooms, and other areas where the probability of eye injury can occur, such as chemical areas. All right, now we'll get into subpart G, which is general workplace conditions. The purpose and applicability of this subpart is prescribed requirements concerning personnel protection on OSC facilities. Okay, we'll get into housekeeping. Work areas and all working surfaces must be kept clear of tools, materials, and equipment not currently in use. Any substance that could create a tripping or slipping hazard must be cleared. Any areas where spillage is inevitable, footwear and flooring designed to reduce slipping may be used. Here's just an example of some workers cleaning up their work area, demonstrating good housekeeping. We'll get into open decks and the guarding of open decks. Here you have a picture of an open deck with no barrier. A worker could fall into here, and another picture where a barricade is present. All open decks that are accessible to personnel must be covered, guarded, or made inaccessible when not in use. This should be done in a way to prevent a person's foot or body from inadvertently passing through the opening. We'll get into lockout, tag out, lotto system. When performing work on equipment powered by an external source, the equipment must be locked out and disconnected from the power source, unless the work being performed necessitates that the power be connected or equipment activated. If the equipment has a lockout, or other device designed to prevent unwanted startup, the lockout or other device must be engaged while work is being performed, unless the work being performed necessitates that the power be connected or the equipment be activated. A lotto tag must be placed at the point where the equipment connects to a power source and at the control panel activating the power. This is going to indicate that the equipment is currently being worked on and the power source is disconnected. Lotto tags must not be removed without permission of the person who places the tag, the immediate supervisor, or their relief, being the person who placed the tag's relief. Here's just some lockouts, some types of lockouts. And that concludes our presentation.